One of these days.
I like that, JD. That's
One
good.
of these days.
He leaves me in charge. I will take
That's right.
Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy C. Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Marty Van Ravensway, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Present.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation this morning will be delivered by Reverend Nathaniel, is it Davis? Davis? From Beach Street Baptist Church, Fort Worth.
Thank you very much. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you today with humble hearts and with the knowledge that all life, even that which some may view as inconvenient, is a gift from your gracious hand. Your word teaches that all humanity was created in your image and that you love each individual equally regardless of age, race, or personal sins. It was because of your great love that you sent your beloved Son to die on Calvary's cross, taking the punishment that we rightly deserve for our sin and giving forgiveness instead to all who would accept his sacrifice. In this great act of true love, we see your plan for how we should behave towards one another with love, mercy, and selfless sacrifice. And let us each live according to this glorious example of Jesus. Lord, we ask you today to grant this body the wisdom to govern as good stewards of that which belongs to the people. Lord, let them follow your example of selfless service and keep always in their minds that they have been elected to serve and not to rule. Let them always seek to do that which best serves the citizens and confirms liberty and justice. Grant them the humility, Father, which is necessary for good and wise leaders. Lead them in every decision so that your will is accomplished. We ask you, Lord, to use this court for your honor and your glory. Bless them with all the gifts necessary to serve and lead Tarrant County. Once again, it is with the utmost humility and deference to your will that we make these requests. And it is in the name of your blessed Son, whose name is above all other names, before whom every knee will bow and every tongue will confess, to the glory of the Father, that Jesus Christ is Lord. In that name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Manius, agenda announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have two announcements this morning for the court. The first is under public hearings, item 8G. This is a consent issue calling for a public hearing concerning the county clerk's records archive. There is a revised court communication. It simply has the document attached to the court communication. Second announcement is under transportation services. It will be item 903. This concerns the Turtle Creek Ranch Phase 3 and Phase 4. We're going to ask that that be removed from the agenda. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of August the 26th.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. And we come to one of my favorite times of the month. I kid my other commissioners about this, especially Commissioner Johnson. But this is something that I really do enjoy. It's our opportunity to recognize our employees who have been of service to Tarrant County for 5, 10, 15, 20, and in this particular month we also have one that's been here 25 years. It's also not unusual for us to find 30 and 35-year employees, and it really is our opportunity to say thank you for the jobs that you do and for the way that you serve the citizens of Tarrant County. And I think because of you, we are recognized as one of the top counties in the state. I will begin by recognizing the 5-year employees, and I will ask that as I call your name for you to stand and then remain standing until we finish that particular group, and then we'll recognize y'all and then move to the next group. So starting off with the 5-year employees, Sean Gray from Constable Precinct 5. As I state usually every month, if it sounds like your name, even remotely, pop on up there and we'll go from there. Michelle LaRue, Sheriff Confinement. Josephine Rivas, Public Health. Thank you. David Sandella, Sheriff Kitchen.
He's in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's probably right. Charlotte White, Tax Office. Now this one, I think I'm going to get the last name on this one. Sherry Whitley, Tax Office. Now, we're going to stop here for a minute.
Is she related to you, Glenn?
We're going to find out.
Where'd your dad or your granddad grow up at?
What's my husband's family in Oklahoma?
Yep. No, we don't have any Oklahomans. We got run out of Tennessee. We didn't. We settled in East Texas after they ran us out of Tennessee. These are our 5-year employees. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank y'all very much. Now for our 10-year employees, and we'll again ask you to stand and remain standing until we finish your group. 10 years, Judith Burgess, Tax Office. Deidre Clark, County Clerk. Mark Fisher, Information Technology. Mark, how you doing? Been a long time. Vernon Leonard, Information. He took care of all my computer stuff out at precinct for a long time. I mean, I'm almost as informationally, technically challenged as other folks I know.
Almost.
Janice Pledger, Domestic Relations. Lana Tennyson, Tax Office. We almost had 100%. Betsy?
She's all the way out in South Lake. It's a long drive.
Okay, let's thank these 10-year employees. Thank y'all again very, very much. 15 years. Sharetta Daniels, Sheriff Confinement. Yolanda Garcia's sorry about that. Betty George, Community Development. Christy Gray, Sheriff Property Evidence. Tracy Harris, CSCD. Archie Hunt, Public Health. Archie. Sue Radford, Sheriff Confinement. Dusty Sanders, County Clerk. Andrew Tosh, Sheriff Patrol. Charmaine Thomas, Sheriff Confinement. James Waits, Sheriff Training. These are our 15-year employees. Let's give them a hand. For our 20-year and plus, we give them a little bit more of a chance to, they get a chance to have a conversation with me. Now, some of them don't have that conversation until very close to the time of the meeting. This time, let's see, Sandra was the last one that I got a hold of, and I got a hold of Sandra at about 4:30 yesterday afternoon. So sometimes I'm getting a little nervous, but I can tell, when they answer the phone and I tell them who they are, they kind of chuckle a little bit and say, well, I was wondering if I was going to get a call from you. So our first one this morning is Jim Blazik from the Sheriff's Confinement. Jim has been started off on September the 14th of 1988 and started off and has spent most of his time in the in the confinement area and has always been on the midnight shift. And, you know, he's now in booking. When I asked him about one of his more memorable moments, he recalled the time when I guess the police had stopped this car and they'd found a lot of marijuana all over the car, and there was two of them, and they brought these two people in, and this one guy was acting like he was a junior attorney, and so he was explaining that there was absolutely no way that you could arrest me because the marijuana was in the car, but none of it was mine. Until the policeman, who was at that point in time patting him down, pulled out about a half a brick out of his pocket. To which the deputy said, "And you were saying?" And the guy just kind of melted right there. And so he said that was not totally unusual, that there was a lot of times they'd come in here saying, "Well, golly, you shouldn't have arrested me." What he likes most is, he said, he's just there and he likes doing his job. He really enjoys the people he works with, and he really wanted to give a lot of credit to those folks. He said a lot of times, especially those of us on the midnight shift, don't get credit. And he said it's really, on that particular shift, it's really a team approach. Because you kind of learn to do a little bit of everything, because that shift is not quite as staffed as some other shifts would be. And so as a result of that, he felt like that the camaraderie and the whole teamwork process was really more evident there than what it might be anyplace else. He said he really has enjoyed over the 20 years working on that particular shift. Jim, we appreciate very much your time and your effort in the 20 years you've given Tarrant County. Next is Linda Brody from Probate Court Number 1. Linda? There she is. Started off in the county clerk's area, I guess in the real estate filing area, and then moved to probate court. She's been a probate analyst, which basically she makes sure all the paperwork's in the right order as it's coming in and getting processed. When I asked her for her more memorable moment, she said, of course, for anyone in that old courthouse, the day of the shooting was something that they always remember and that many of them reflect upon. But she says she has had the opportunity to serve under two great judges, Judge Burnett and then Judge King. And she said that's just meant a tremendous amount. She really likes the type of work that she's done and the variety of the cases that she gets a chance to hear, and she's gotten a chance to hear over these past 20 years. She said it's just really been a privilege to work for Tarrant County, and especially for those particular judges. And so we really, really, Linda, appreciate the time that you've given Tarrant County and of service that you've given us. Thank you very much. Next is Helen Clay. There's Helen. Helen's in the domestic relations area. Started off there. Started in the family court services area, has been a transportation officer, and is now a case aide. She said, I have been a case aide for 20 years, and I think in talking with the supervisor, she's the only case aide that has really worked in the child visitation center for the full 20 years. She went 10 years, except for the times that she actually took vacation. She's gone 10 years without having any weekends off. And so, again, I think that just speaks to her service. It speaks to her dedication to the job. When I asked her what she liked most, it was the variety of the work. She said, really everybody I work with is great, and I really enjoy that. She said, I really have enjoyed my job, and I've enjoyed the opportunity to try to make a difference in the lives of the families that she's had an opportunity to touch. Now, Helen's retiring in September. And so, Helen, I really want to tell you how much we appreciate the 20 years you've given to Tarrant County. Thank you very much. Next is Kay Crawwell, Constable Precinct 1. Started off in the Sheriff's Department, I guess spent about a year and a half there, and that was early on, I guess in maybe the late, also about late 70s, maybe early 80s. Then came back in 1988 to the Sheriff's Department and really worked all over. So she's actually had about 21 and a half years with Tarrant County. About 5 years ago, she moved over to the Constable's area. When I asked her of her more memorable moments, she said the time that she worked in the mental health warrants with the Sheriff's Department and then also in the extradition area. She said she had a lot of memories about those particular times. When I asked her what she liked most, she said, it's a lot of great people, that they treat you like a family, and that it has really been a great place to work. And she even had some pretty good things to say about Constable Crowder and how much she has enjoyed working with the constables. So, again, we really appreciate the time that you've given to Tarrant County. Thank you very much. Something just happened over there and I missed it. Next is Evelyn Despain with the County Clerk. Evelyn, there she is. Started off in the County Clerk area, started off in the traffic area, and now has moved into the bond forfeiture area. When I asked her about her more memorable time, she said just in the time that she worked in the traffic, and I think some of the stories that she would hear and some of the things that would go on. She said the job has really been a rewarding job, and that she has really loved the people that she's had an opportunity to work with over the years, and it's just been something that's meant an awful lot to her. Evelyn, we appreciate very much the 20 years you've given to Tarrant County. Next is Tommy Duncan. Where's Tommy? Okay, Tommy may not have, if it wasn't Tommy, I'd say that maybe I mispronounced the name, but I think I got that one right. It was funny because, again, a lot of folks helped me with this deal, and we had Tommy's telephone number on 2 different records this month, and so I called the other person who I thought was Victor, and I said, and he answered the phone, and I said, Victor, and he said, no, it's Tommy. I said, oh, so you go by Tommy? And he said, yes. And I said, well, how have you enjoyed your time in the sheriff's office? He says, I'm in the facilities. And it was about that time that I realized that I had called. I mean, depending upon if I call them right in order, then I realize, okay, this is the same number that I called before. But when I've got 12 or 13 people, I miss a number. So after I finally figured out that he was in facilities and not in the sheriff's department, we had a great conversation. He actually started out in Precinct 4 and is now the supervisor of the carpentry shop. He has really enjoyed working with Tarrant County and said that he really appreciated the leadership and the kind of the assistance that David Phillips had given him as he's worked in this area and over the years. And so I thought I would mention that, although I don't even see David right now. So, David, where are you? I know you're... No, he's not even here right now.
Well, somebody just came in. Make sure that's not Tommy.
Did Tommy come in? No?
Okay.
So, those of y'all know Tommy, you can tell him that I did talk about him a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, or as I just mentioned, Victor Kraku from the Sheriff's Department was not able to make it today. Today is one of his day off, and he had some other responsibilities that he had already committed to, so he's not able to make it this month. Next is Cheryl McDonald with CSCD. There's Cheryl back there. Cheryl actually started off in the Dallas area and then saw the light and moved west. She started out on what was considered a 30-day trial basis in August of 1988. And then at the end of that 30 days, they hired her on full-time, and so she started in September of 1988. She started off as at the Alcohol Recovery Center on Harmon Road, and then transferred over to the Miller office and has been the supervisor over there for the last 10 years. when I asked her for a more memorable moment, she said it was actually some of the chili cook-offs that had actually occurred out in Mansfield. And she said also it was it was coordinating the victims' impact panels, which she helped kind of get started and work through. She said she very much enjoyed working with the officers and being able to help folks out. And she really enjoyed making a positive impact on someone's life. And she felt like that through her efforts and through her responsibilities at CSCD that she had a lot of opportunity to do that. You know, in closing, she said she was very appreciative of the judges that she had a chance to work with the Commissioners Court, and with her supervisors for all the support they had given her over these past 20 years. And again, I think a lot of times we hear that as I talk with folks, and they talk about the fact that their supervisors and the people they work with always take the time to be interested in what they do and in their employees. And I think that's so important to our employees and to the folks of Tarrant County. Cheryl, we really want to thank you for the 20 years you've given us. Next is Tom Smith of Criminal Investigations. There he is. Started off in jail and spent about 13 years there, and then moved over to internal affairs for about 2 years, and then went into criminal investigations. More memorable moments, he's another one of these folks that when I ask that question, they kind of laugh, and I know, well, I'm not going to get any stories out of them, but at least they've thought of a few, or caused them to think of a few. He did, now I caught him at home. Well, I think I caught everybody at home this month. And in the background, as he was laughing, his wife was telling a story. And so I asked him to repeat the story, and he said, you know, the first night I worked, I came home and I said, I'm not going back. I just don't think I can go back. And his wife said, well, we've just paid for the uniforms. Could you at least go back long enough to get that first paycheck? And he said, so I did. And he said, you know, 20 years later, the time has flown by. It's been a great place. He said, I have worked with some super people. And that's been what's made it the best. And he said, I really feel like in the criminal investigation area that I'm helping people in the community. And he said, that's really what I think it's all about. He's seen many positive changes over the years, and he's really happy with where he's at now, and really hopes that he'll be there until he has a chance to retire. So, you know, Tom, we appreciate very much the 20 years you've given to Tarrant County. Thank you. Next is Sandra Stewart. And as I said earlier, Sandra was the last one that I talked with on this month, and it was at about 4:45 yesterday. So we were getting close. When I talked to Sandra, she's in the public health area and has been there for 20 years. She started out in the public health area, started out in WIC and served in the WIC area, I guess in Bedford at this time. And she is a nutritionist there. She remembers when it was really a very small project, and that over the years it has grown to, at that point in time they knew just about everybody in the program, and now it is so large. I guess they meet maybe on a quarterly basis, and it's not you really have a hard time getting to know everyone. She said, I have really enjoyed the people that I've had a chance to work with, and really I could tell from the conversation, really enjoys the opportunity to work with the children and with the mothers as they go through the program, and having an opportunity to work with them and to possibly help them out. She said it's been a wonderful experience. The time has really just flown by. She's had great supervisors and great benefits, and that she just really enjoys everything that she has an opportunity to do and every day. So we really want to thank you again, Sandra, for the 20 years you've given to Tarrant County. Now, Linda Wiley with Pretrial Services was our 25-year employee, and she was not able to attend today. She had some other things going on, so she expressed her regrets, but just said that she wasn't going to be able to make it. So again, that's our employees for this month. That represents about 480 years of service. And again, we want to thank each and every one of you for the jobs that you do every day, because you really are what makes Tarrant County a great place to live and to work, because of the impact and the influence that you have over other employees within this organization. Refreshments, 504C. And we'll take a few moments and let y'all head back that way. Thank y'all again. Let's give everybody a big hand. We'll come back to order. Commissioner Brooks, you have a couple of proclamations. I guess
Yes, Your Honor, I've got two proclamations. The first is in honor of the 16 de Septiembre parade, which will be held this coming Saturday. And I would ask that you read it into the record.
In Spanish.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you, I saw the title and I said, I hope this is as far as it goes. I'll be glad to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Whereas September the 15th through October the 15th has been proclaimed as National Hispanic Heritage Month in honor of the many contributions that Hispanic Americans have made and continue to make to our nation, and whereas the National Hispanic Heritage Month includes Mexican Independence Day, which is September the 16th, the day people of Mexican descent around the world celebrate Mexico's independence from Spanish rule, and whereas in 1965, Dick Salinas initiated a 16 de Septiembre parade with cultural tradition and history in our community, and whereas the Mexican Independence Parade Committee will sponsor its 43rd annual 16 de Septiembre parade to be held in downtown Fort Worth on September the 13th, and continue the tradition, culture, history, and future of Hispanic Americans, and whereas the 16th de Septiembre Parade Committee will continue to be very active in a community working to promote Hispanic heritage and giving scholarships to deserving Hispanic students to further their education as they honor Dick Salinas for his strength of vision, power of leadership in his community, and the legacy he left behind. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim Saturday, September the 13th, 2008, as 16 de Septiembre Parade Day in Tarrant County, in witness whereof we have heretofore set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 9th day of September, 2008.
I move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
I would ask that Mrs. Juanita Salinas join me at the podium to receive this proclamation.
Good morning.
Ms. Salinas, thank you for carrying on the tradition that Dick started. He would be so proud. Won't you have a few words for us, please?
Good morning.
On behalf of the Mexican Independence Parade Committee and 43 years of celebration for the downtown parade, I, Juanita Salinas, want to thank you, Judge, and all the county commissioners for the proclamation. It would have been an honor to my brother, which deceased in '92, and I want to thank you with all my heart from all the committee of the Mexican Independence Parade Committee. Thank you, Judge, and thank you, county commissioners.
Thank you very much.
The second proclamation is a resolution in support of the Fort Worth Metropolitan Black Chamber of Commerce Women's Division 16th Annual Business Conference. It is for ratification only. It will be presented on Thursday. I move its ratification.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius. Oops. We have before you the consent agenda.
Yes, sir, we do.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have several public hearings that we need to deal with this morning. First public hearing is actually the second public hearing concerning Tarrant County government's tax rate for tax year 2008. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court conduct a public hearing at this time to have input from citizens concerning our tax rate for tax year 2008. I'd also like to point out and have included in the records of the court that it's the intent of the Commissioners Court to set that tax rate next Tuesday, September 16th, 2008 at 10 a.m. in the morning here in the Commissioner's Courtroom in the County Administration Building. Your Honor, members of the court, our effective tax rate is .251280. Our rollback tax rate is .278311, and our current tax rate is .2665.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone present, and I'll open the public hearing, is there anyone present who would like to speak at this time? Yes, sir. I need you to come forward. I need you to state do you have a form? Go ahead and come on forward and then just give us your name, and then I'll ask you to name and address.
Hi, my name is Brian O'Dwyer. I live at 925 Jerry Lane at Bedford, Texas. And I'm just here to, haven't been here this Commissioner's Court, but taxes are always going up for me. Since I moved into Tarrant County, a lot of my taxes, my city taxes, have gone up 100%, so forth and so on. Yours keeps going up. And every time I read in the paper, I see things in there that I'm not real happy about. I find out that you guys are going to have to do more capital stuff, more employees, and we all need that, but part of the problem is that somebody's supposed to control all the development that goes outside the city boundaries. That's you. If things get out of control, roads don't get built and other things, that's your job to make sure that gets done. It's not mine. I pay my taxes, but it's your job. And I read some stuff about how they wanted to build a road, and one of the commissioners didn't want to go through a city when he was the mayor. Now that same person wants to spend billions of my tax dollars for trains, new roads, et cetera, et cetera. You guys are accountable for things that go on. It just doesn't happen out of the blue. It's your job. You're getting paid to do it, to take care of these things. If there's a traffic jam build up because people are building out there, it didn't happen out of the blue. You guys give permits to these people to build. Somebody knows what's going on. I don't. I don't have the time to do it. I have to go and work every single day, just like a lot of people do. But it's your responsibility to take care of these issues. It's not mine. But you are accountable to me. I'm the taxpayer and the voter. So things need to happen. We need to take care of this stuff. We don't need to put it off 20 years from now and worry about it and then come up with grand schemes to spend billions and billions of taxpayers' dollars. Or shuffle money around to help Jerry Jones build the stadium and get the road built there while other parts of the county don't have the roads built. You guys need to find out what the priority is, and it's the tax. Thanks.
I may need you to go ahead and fill out. Did you get the first name?
I'll fill out.
Y'all got everything? Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at this point in time? Seeing none, then we'll close the public hearing. And there's no action to take at this point in time.
Not at this time, Your Honor. Members of the court, we go to the second public hearing. This, again, is a second public hearing concerning the Tarrant County Hospital District's tax rate for tax year 2008. We're requesting that the Commissioner's Court conduct a public hearing as it relates to this particular tax rate for 2008. And also note in the minutes of the court that it is the intent of the Commissioner's Court to set the tax rate next Tuesday, September 16, 2008, at 10 o'clock in the morning in the Commissioner's Courtroom located in this building at 100 East Weatherford Street, Fort Worth, Texas. Members of the court, on the hospital district, their effective tax rate is .223557. The rollback tax rate is .241204. And their current tax rate is .230397.
This is a public hearing. Open it at this point in time. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this in regards to this particular item? Yes, sir.
Hi, Brian O'Dwyer, 925 Jerry Lane, Bedford, Texas. And once again, I read the articles in the paper about all the problems at John Peter Smith. And I was kind of appalled. I work in a hospital, and I know that what JACO does, I know all the things that go on. Harry Truman said it best, the buck stops here. If you guys say we didn't know what was going on, that's not good enough. You guys appoint that board. It's your responsibility. You're accountable. They may be the hardest working board, as you said, but they seem not to be the most effective board. And if they have $500 million in a reserve fund and you're still taxing me, there's something seriously wrong there. This is a not-for-profit thing. This is an indigent hospital. It's designed to help the poor and those who don't have insurance. I have insurance. It's expensive, but there's a lot of people that don't have it. A lot of children. Texas has 25% of the children uninsured. Okay? Now, they've done some things. They've put some clinics out in the schools, and that's good. But it's not these kids' problem that they don't have insurance. They need it. And if you set up roadblocks so they can't get help, you're just punishing them for mistakes that other people made, that I've made, you've made, other people, their parents, but not them. It's not their problem, or any other people that can't afford it. If you've never been without health care, if you've been injured and not been able to get health care, it'd be a real big issue for you. Okay? And again, I work in a hospital. I actually work in a children's hospital. So it's a big issue. If you're sitting on a big pot of money and you're pretending that we don't know what happened, you saw the money grow each year. You're accountable for that. Again, you're responsible. I don't know what it is. I don't look at the thing. I don't appoint the people to the board. I just pay my taxes every year. If I don't, you guys can come take my house. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's your job to make sure that that money gets spent wisely and that thing gets run, and not to brush it under the thing, say we built a new wing, we don't need to worry about the new emergency, the old problems, whatever. No, you're accountable for all that stuff. Ultimately, you and only you are. Okay, just like in the business world. The board's accountable. Over the past, 10 years or so, we've seen some really nasty things where people just live off and they don't even know what's going on. So we've had collapses. We just had Fannie Mae and Sallie Mae just go under, right? Wherever they are. Mainly because people weren't paying attention. But the taxpayer will bail them out. That's you and me. Same with the way that they run the Medicaid stuff to build money there. It's not free money. I pay it every April 15th. It's not free. And I can assure you I pay a lot of money. So if you're not doing your job, I'm going to come down and I'm going to talk to you about it. Okay? Do your job. You appoint that board, hold those people accountable. If they're not doing their job, get them off the board, get people on there that's going to do it. Get health care back where it is. There are so many people that don't have health care in this state. It's a crime. It's miserable. It's something to be ashamed about. It's not something to pretend doesn't happen. It's a shame. Okay? And you're sitting on $500 million. It's a shame. Thank you.
Anybody else who wishes to comment at this time? Then I'll close the public hearing, and Mr. Manius will move to the next one.
Thank you, Your Honor. The next one deals with transportation.
Good morning. I'm here this morning to request that Commissioners Court consider placing a speed limit of 40 miles per hour on Pyramid Boulevard in Pyramid Acres in Precinct 1.
Is there anyone, this is a public hearing, is there anyone who wishes to speak to this particular matter? None appearing, then I'll close the public hearing. Any action that you wish to take?
I assume that your recommendation is the result of a speed study, traffic study?
Yes, sir, it is.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
My second item this morning is to request that Commissioners Court consider placing no truck signs on Appian Way in Precinct 4. This is a result of a request we received from Precinct 4. They've got several large trucks driving down Appian Way off 199, and there's two 90-degree bends they're not able to make, so they get stuck at the end of Appian Way.
This is a public hearing, so at this time I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to comment at this time. Appears to be none, so I'll close the public hearing.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
My third and final public hearing this morning is a request that Commissioners Court consider placing a yield sign. We're replacing a yield sign with a stop sign at the intersection of Hanger Cutoff, Eagle Mountain Dam Road, and Eagle Heights Road in Precinct 4. There's an existing yield sign. We're asking to replace that with a stop sign.
Again, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the courtroom that wishes to speak to this matter? Appears to be none, so I will close the public hearing. And is there any action that you'd like to take at this time?
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, Under Item 1 under the Administrator section, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve the Tarrant County Emergency Services District Number 1 fiscal year 2009 budgets and the tax rate of .064 per $100 valuation for tax year 2008. Let me very briefly go over this budget with you. The budget itself is $4,083,757. If you look in your court communication, there are some bullet points what is included in that particular budget. I think this is a good expansion of the budget. At the same time, it maintains the current tax rate. We need to make a statement for the record that the Tarrant County Emergency Services District Number 1 currently has a property tax rate of .064 per $100 valuation. In order to keep the same tax rate of .064 per $100 in value, a motion needs to be made for a tax rate, even though that's even a tax rate increase, even when the tax rate remains the same. If those taxes raises $1 more than last year, there's a motion to follow. I would also like to have placed in the minutes of the court that if this motion passes, that the minutes state that this tax rate will raise more taxes for maintenance and operations than last year's tax rate. The tax rate will raise taxes for maintenance and operations on a $100,000 home by approximately 0 cents.
Well, by state law, somebody has to make this motion, so I am required to make a motion for a tax increase even when the tax rate remains the same. If that tax rate raises more than $1 than last year, since I want to keep the same rate as last year, I move to approve the 2009 budget and that property taxes be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of .064 per $100 in value.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
I do want to say that board and our staff has done an outstanding job with the Emergency Services District, and Randy Renwall, our fire marshal, has led that charge, and thank you very much, Randy and staff.
Could I ask a question that's related to that district? Do we have requirements in that district for how construction is made a universal standard for the fire association or something like that?
International standard,
Thank
international.
you. There we go.
I think it's probably International Building Code.
Building code, yeah.
Yeah, for the.
We just, apparently you got the letter that I just recently received, and I think all of us received that. I don't know, I have passed it on. I think that our transportation department is going to have to address that with us.
Well, actually, that's not what I was referring to. The letter was one part, but at our TAC conference, a gentleman came up to me who was part of this association and said that we're the only large county and only one of really a handful that don't have this particular standard. So I was wondering why. And maybe we can find out.
You tell me.
Here comes Randy, and I guess, Renee, are you at all knowledgeable of this?
Well, okay. I'm glad I asked that question.
There is an association of ESDs. Most counties are not set up the same way as a county.
As we are.
Our district is one county in all of the unincorporated area of the county. As annexation happens, then the territory is depleted. It does not go outside the boundaries of the county. Other counties have multiple ESDs.
I see.
And some of them cross the borders of the county. So there are different types of ESDs. They also, some of them have elected boards also, and they're a little more politically charged.
Okay.
And that's really the reason
All right.
we're not involved.
Thank you.
Marty, were you also referring to the construction of the homes and fire prevention and proper type of sheetrock and
That was the impression I got from the gentleman I talked with.
There's that issue, and then there's a whole nother group of issues on development
Right,
these subdivisions that,
that we don't have any control over.
well, that's questionable.
I mean, a little bit, but it doesn't allow us to do the things most people expect us to be able to do.
Okay.
But the question, Randy, is in regard to the construction in the unincorporated, and do we have a standard about the construction for meeting some fire regulations?
Let us do this. Let's go ahead and we'll bring this back to you next week in just
Okay.
a very short information piece.
And I'll give you the man's card that'll actually say what that entity is, because I can't bring it up.
Okay, great. Members of the court, we could go to item number 2. This also deals with the fire marshal's office. We're requesting that the court repeal the prohibition against outside burning in the unincorporated areas of Tarrant County.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
On a beautiful rainy day, took it off.
Normally, it rains when we try to put that burn ban on,
I know.
Commissioner. Your Honor, members of the court, we could go to item number 3. We're requesting that the Commissioners' Court approve an interlocal cooperative agreement between the City of Fort Worth and Tarrant County concerning the Trinity River Vision Bridge project.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, on item number 4, we're requesting that the Commissioners' Court approve amendment to the contracts which are listed in your court communication as it relates to leases at the Resource Connection.
Move approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, members of the court, on item number 5, we're requesting that the Commissioners' Court approve the joint agreements and resolutions regarding City of Grapevine Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Entitlement Programs for program year 2009 through 2011.
I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Finally, members of the court, on item number 6, we're requesting that the Commissioners' Court approve and concur with actions of the Tarrant County Hospital District as it relates to a construction contract with Hutchison Construction. It relates to the work associated with the relocation of the finance project, or the finance relocation project. The amount of this contract is $1,532,530. The total project budget is $2.5 million.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Budget and risk management.
Risk Management Board is recommending the payment of 3 claims today. They're each listed on your agenda.
Move approval for the payments listed on the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Steve, elections?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here requesting, first of all, approval of changes to Election Day polling places for the November general election. We provided a list of those to you. And these are changes that we made since last November's election, which was the last county-ordered election.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Do we have enough time to get pre-clearance from the Justice Department
Yes, sir.
on these things?
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Second item is to request approval of precinct combinations at the polling places where we have multiple precincts. This will allow for us to have a common set of election officials conducting the election at the polling places where we have multiple precincts, rather than, some places we have, say, 3 precincts. We'd rather have one election judge managing all 3 precincts rather than 3 separate election judges.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Steve, let me ask you a question. I had someone ask me this past weekend, they had been someplace and a gentleman was explaining that, somebody asked him about a pin that he had on his hat, and he said, well, this allows me to register people to vote.
Well, we do have a program for certifying people who want to be volunteer deputy registrars. It's a program statewide. We administer it to people in the county that want to sign up and be able to register people. Anyone can circulate voter registration applications, but you have to be a volunteer deputy registrar certified through our office to be able to collect completed applications. Not sure what he's referring to about the PIN, but I'm sure that he must be a volunteer.
So all that allows, somebody who's deputized to do that, all that allows them to do is to collect a completed registration form and then turn it in.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it doesn't really do anything more than they turn it in and...
Right. They're able, in fact, they have to bring that.
Is there a reason why I can't, if somebody fills out a card and I say, well, here, give it to me, I'll mail it, or I'm not supposed to do that?
Unless you're deputized, yes, sir, that's correct. That's state law.
And do you deputize anybody, or what do you have to go through in order to be deputized?
It's minimal requirements. We actually deputize people through the mail, but they do have to have the deputization in order to be able to receive the completed application from an applicant.
Well, I need to get a bunch of them deputized out in my precinct because
We might have you come back and deputize us all here at some point in time. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. No, this is mine, I think.
Yeah, he knew who.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have 5 items for the court this morning. Our first item, we're asking the court to receive and file the personnel agenda.
so moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second item, we're asking the court to approve a waiver of terminal benefits for the district court support staff. The court coordinator from that court is retiring at the end of September with 400 vacation hours. The district court is requesting the waiver effective 10/1. The impact to the general fund is a little more than $8,300.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Similarly, with item 3, we're asking the court for approval of waiver of terminal benefits for Precinct 4. The Assistant Director of Field Operations retired at the end of August with 400 vacation hours. Precinct 4 is requesting this waiver effective September 2nd. The fiscal impact to the Road and Bridge Fund is approximately $17,500.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 4, we're asking the court to approve an extension of project employment for the county clerk's office. The county clerk is requesting a 1-year extension, which would end in August of 2009. This is a project employee who is assigned to records indexing. This will not impact general fund.
Move.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And finally, with item 5, this is the action item as a follow-up to the briefing item on yesterday. We're asking the court to approve the plan changes that we discussed yesterday. That's Exhibit A. Your provider renewals, which are Exhibits B1 and B2. Contribution rates for active employees, outlined in Exhibit C1. And our retiree rates, which are outlined in Exhibits C2, and then if you recall, in Exhibit C3, we're recommending option C.
Move approval of all of the above.
Second.
Have some discussion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah. Tina, did we find out what these specialty drugs are, or any further explanation?
I believe Ms. Kurt read off a listing of those yesterday. I don't know that.
You're working on? Okay. You got it? Okay. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
In connection with this item, if I could discuss one additional item with the court. All of you should have this handout at your areas. We talked just briefly yesterday about looking forward to plan year 2010. We talked a little bit about some of the discussions that we've had with regard to our retiree insurance coverage, and we talked a little bit also about the creation of a committee, which we'd like to bring back to the court next week as an action item. As part of that action item, we also want to bring back to the court next week for your consideration an additional plan change that we've talked about during our PEBC board meetings about the HMO plan. As the court is aware, the last several years, the HMO plan has some pretty significant rate increases from year to year. We've had some concerns about that. We've looked at how we might be able to encourage employees to actually move away from the HMO plan, perhaps, and consider some of the other plans. We've not been very successful. As a result of that, those premiums have continued to increase. Our executive director at PEBC has been looking at this issue for some time because not only Tarrant County has been impacted, but the other agencies of PEBC as well. What we've talked about, and again what we'd like the court to consider, is the possibility of not offering the HMO plan in 2010, which would leave us with the EPO and the PPO, and of course still the option for employees to opt out. Some of us had some concerns about the transition of our employees from the HMO plan to the EPO and PPO plans. What we've talked about, what we'll ask the court to consider next week, is if we eliminate the HMO plan, one of the things that we'd be recommending is that we redesign, and I'll use that term, the EPO plan so that it looks more like the HMO plan. Your third page of that handout, and I won't go into very many of these, but I think just to give you a feel for what that redesign might look like, if you look at your third page of this handout, there's a chart there, and there are a lot of different columns, but the one that I want you to focus on is the EPO column, and there's a 2009 and a 2010 column. So for 2010, what some of the things we've talked about would be, for example, we would eliminate the requirement that individuals select a PCP, so that would no longer be a requirement, which would be a good thing. We would also recommend that we eliminate the pre-existing condition limitation, which currently is in place on the EPO. Again, it would look more like the HMO plan. We would also recommend, for example, that we would eliminate the 90-10 co-insurance. Currently, our members on the EPO and PPO plans, for many of their services, you meet a deductible, and then the plan pays 90-10. What we be 90-10 in some cases. What we'd be proposing for 2010, too many tens, 2010, would be the elimination of that, and instead we would implement a copay and then 100% coverage, which again would look more like the HMO. So I think that after our discussion on yesterday, I think that made these suggested changes made that a little bit more palatable to those of us who were concerned about the elimination of the HMO plan. The benefit consultant has actually looked at the census, has done some modeling, and is telling us that if we moved the HMO participants into the self-funded plans, that we would actually see those accrual rates come down. So I think, again, with some of the suggested changes, we're a little bit more comfortable with the prospect of eliminating the HMO plan. And so that's what we'd like to come back to you with next week, again, along with the composition of the committee that we talked about yesterday to actually look at some of our retiree issues. So if you have any questions about the discussions that we've had about the HMO plan, I'll be happy to take those.
I have a question on the outpatient hospital. On the current EPO, it says 10% up to $1,750 out of pocket, or max for $3,500 a family.
Yes.
Is there a max on the 300 copay and then the plan pays 100%, or is it 300 every time?
Well, you would, for any inpatient hospital stay, and we're looking at the, I want to
No,
make
I'm
sure we're talking about.
the outpatient.
Right, I'm sorry,
Item
outpatient.
9.
Yes. For 2010, what we would be proposing would be, rather than the deductible and then the 90/10, the employees then would actually pay just the $300 copayment, and then the plan would pick up 100% of the cost, and that would be for every outpatient hospital stay.
Would that be more beneficial to someone who has, say, an asthmatic child who is frequently in the hospital but not inpatient?
Absolutely, because again, it'd be capped at the $300 copay, and of course, it would depend.
Per event?
Per event,
Okay.
yes. So if the court has no additional questions and no objection, then what we'd like to do is just bring back this item next week as an action item, along with, again, our committee creation.
I think those of us who are already enrolled in the EPO think this is wonderful. I hope that those in the HMO feel the same way.
I'll let you know.
And one issue with, that just would like to remind the court that this proposed elimination of the HMO does not affect next year's enrollment, but rather 2010 enrollment. And the purpose is, if in fact you choose to do that, so that we can give our employees the greatest lead time in that action.
And will we be going around at enrollment time talking about enrollment this year and explaining
What
this
we've
again?
talked about during our board meetings is exactly how we proceed with communication. Mr. Manius and I have had a couple of conversations about that. And of course, our goal will be to communicate as often as we can what we're contemplating for 2010, and to make sure that employees are very clear about what we're talking about for 2009, which of course still includes the offering of the HMO, and then 2010. So we'll make sure that we communicate that often and as clearly as we're able to do that.
And do you know if the doctors who will accept the Blue Cross Blue Shield HMO are diminishing in number?
That's my understanding. I think there are concerns that that trend will continue. We also have asked the executive director at PEBC to run an analysis so that we can see how many of the doctors in the Blue Cross Blue Shield network are in the EPO network, and then of course we can always make attempts to try to sign up those doctors that are not there to get them over into our self-funded plans. So we're working on that as we speak.
That's certainly an issue right now. I mean, you know, the doctors
Right.
at JPS are not accepting Blue Cross, and that's been an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the court, we'll have this on the agenda for next week for action.
Thank you, Tina. Public Health, how are you today?
Fine, good morning.
Good morning.
We have 3 items from Public Health today, and the first is that we're asking for an approval of agreement with the Nurse Family Partnership, the actual business end of things, their proprietary contract, and they're located in Denver, Colorado.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
The second is approval for a professional services contract with Mary Izagari to provide research for our epidemiology department.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And the final is a professional services contract with MedStar, the Area Metropolitan Ambulance Authority, to have them actually report to us the things that they're finding on their ambulance calls that will go into our syndromic surveillance reporting system, so we don't have to wait till it gets to the hospital.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beecham.
Your Honor, other members of the court, we have 3 items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation in regards to RFP number 2008-106. This is for residential placement for juvenile services. Recommendation will be to award to the 4 vendors as shown in your court communique. For approval, also seeking contract approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second item is another bid award recommendation for bid number 2008-146. This is our annual contract for kitchen equipment parts. Recommendation would be awarded to the primary and secondary vendors as shown in the court communique on a per discount from list price basis.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our last item is another bid award recommendation for RFP number 2008-149. This is for SAP Consulting Services. Our recommendation will be toward the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors as shown in your court communique.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Green, come on down.
Good morning. Commissioners and Judge, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve the resolution in order declaring a public necessity for a public project known as the Medical Examiner's Office Expansion Project and appurtenant parking facilities, approve the plans thereof, and authorize acquisition and payment of compensation.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Appointments.
I have one. I passed you out the packet about Mr. Victor Clark, who I would like to appoint to the Tarrant County Child Protective Services Board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and I'll just make note of the fact that the criminal background check has been performed. Any other discussion? Please vote. The motion passes unanimously, and we'll go ahead and send a letter to him. And also, I'll just remind y'all that as we're making these appointments now, we're sending them the letter, and they have within I believe, a certain period of time, it may be 90 days or something like that, to decide whether they want all of their information subject to public, especially their private home numbers and stuff along that type line. So we do that, but that may be something that you want to call and remind them of too at times. You have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius, briefing items.
Thank you, Your Honor. We are going to take these out of order this morning. If we can go to item B. This concerns a briefing concerning the jail facilities, building schematic design, and capital budget. Mr. Phillips is here to address the court at this time.
Did you wear your striped tie in honor of the jail today?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Stripes on? Just got to keep you off your, keep you on your toes.
That's very clever.
You only have one if Mr. Duff wants you to have one.
Yes. I'll go. I think I can go ahead and start. Yes, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Duff.
He was napping back there.
Good morning. This morning I'll provide you with an overview of the schematic design and capital budget for the jail building that was included in the 2006 capital improvement program. Also, I'll provide you with some general scope and budget related to the work in the correction center and other related work regarding this jail project. At that point, I'll turn it over to Randy Gideon, Don Olson, and Michael Swartz here they will discuss the schematic design drawings and layouts for you. So, this building is somewhat different than the building we presented in April 15, 2008. Commissioners Court gave us an extra 60 days to look over and maybe do some cost reduction options, and we've done that. This building is a 5-level building, and the one we presented in April is a 6-level building. The architects were able to eliminate an entire floor by following the design recommendations by Bob Knowles. Bob recommended that we drastically reduce the inmate day room sizes and arrange the cells in such a linear fashion that allowed us to consolidate cells on various floors and thus eliminate an entire floor from the project. Jail Standards has approved this design.
Way to go, Bob Knowles.
Yeah.
This design has several good features. Probably the most important is a safer building for work environment for the correctional officers. Also, it reduces the utility and maintenance costs of approximately $100,000 each and every year from here on out because of the reduction of the floor. It also has a net reduction of about $1 million in upfront capital costs for the building, and it adds 13 additional beds. It goes to 445 beds. Originally, we had designed 432. This building also has a full cook kitchen for 5,500 inmates, and it has a sky bridge and a tunnel that connects to the corrections center. And the only downside I can see is significant is we had to remove the property room from the building program to fit everything in. So, and I'll get to that on the next slide.
Is there any resemblance, that thing that you've got in the background, is that any resemblance to what you expect the building to look like?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Jail building budget. This is the building alone. We presented to you in April 15th, about a $98 million project, and this is a $96 million project. And this particular, however, there is an add back in on this next slide where we remove the property room. We need to add back in about $900,000 to make it apples to apples, because we did have to remove the property room from this project. This is work that was not originally included in the 2006 capital improvement plan. In the correction center, that first bullet is replace the security systems and fire alarm. That is a maintenance issue that has been running parallel to this building project. It's about $8.8 million. It is an issue regarding obsolescence of what we have in there now. We can maintain it today, and it passes jail standards today. However, I'm concerned about what happens in 5 years. The parts and equipment are no longer made. We're having to use refurbished parts. We've had to reverse engineer circuit boards and things, and so we think it's a good idea to do this project at the same time we build the jail for several reasons. Number one, we can use the same security and electrical engineers to design both buildings as far as the security systems and fire alarm systems. We can use the same manufacturer to keep the spare parts costs down. Also, we can use the same contractor to help with pricing savings, and probably most of all is to reduce the operating learning curve for the Sheriff's Department and my staff regarding operating fire alarm and security systems in both buildings. So there's several good things about doing that at the same time.
Does doing it at the same time mean that we're going to roll the cost into the CIP program?
That is determination of the court. It's always been a parallel as far as a maintenance item, but
what was the original amount that we budgeted for this?
$108 million. And I can give you a full total here on the next slide.
All right.
The next bullet is a space planning issue. Once it was decided that to move the jail to the Mueller block, it was advantageous to improve jail operational efficiencies by, once we move the old kitchen out to the new jail, we convert that old kitchen area in the first floor to a court holding, and also to relieve some storage issues we're having with laundry and commissary. Right now they're having to put the laundry carts and stuff in the hallways, and it's just not a good situation. That $4.9 million project will solve that. That will actually have to be done after the jail is finished, because the kitchen will need to be finished in the new jail and approved and operationally functional before we can vacate that area. And again, the Cold Springs, I've talked with the Sheriff's Department. They seem to be okay with building a metal building for their property room out at Cold Springs. However, the proper site for that is right over a building that was built by the inmates many, many years ago that we use for our jail facility maintenance. And it's an old wood building, and we would need to maybe move that and do away with that and make this building here, this new metal building, would take care of property room and jail facility inmate maintenance. This is about an 8,000 square foot building, and it doesn't have to be built now. It could be built a couple or 3 years from now, so that budget should be okay for 2 or 3 years. The total capital for all of work I've discussed. Again, the jail building by itself is approximately $96 million. If you add in the Sheriff's Department administrative offices, which we're just wrapping up now, the sheriff has just started moving in last month, and he should complete this month. That project is going to come in at about $6.2 million. Then we add back in the work that was not included in the original 2006 CIP, all comes to about $117 million for jail work over the next several years.
And you're saying that those first couple of items up there, we originally had budgeted 108.
That's correct.
And so the 108 is comparable to the two top numbers?
That's correct.
So we're still about $6 million under what we originally budgeted?
That's correct. Now, we have leased facilities for records management in part of that project.
Right.
And we'll have to make a determination after this project. I'd like, if it's okay, I'd like to wait on that and see how we come with the budget and see how construction costs are panned out when we buy this thing out in about a year, and go from there.
But it looks like we've still got about an $8 million gap.
Well,
the work, yes, correct, but the work on the bullet under for the correction center security and fire alarm was, if we hadn't have done the jail, it would have been still a maintenance item. We would have funded out of cash or COs to operate the building.
And yesterday in our budget discussions, you might recall that we did, or the budget director did point out that there were additional expenses that we were going to incur in our capital in future years that were not funded by the CIP, and the security and fire alarm systems were mentioned in that, and we anticipate funding it.
As long as we recognize that all of this isn't going to fit in the CIP, right, then we're okay. We know we've got to find other sources of funding for some of it.
Well, I guess I would have said to you that I am surprised, delightfully surprised that we're where we are, because given the increase in costs over the last couple of years, I'm very surprised that, and I hope, and I guess what at least I'm hearing is we have not made any changes, dramatic changes that we really feel like we're making a mistake by not putting. I mean, this property room at Cold Springs, I want to be sure that's not a mistake that we're going to end up regretting, because we're having to constantly transport stuff over to Cold Springs back and forth. And the same thing with anything else in there. I mean,
is that property room, Sheriff, going to be for the entire jail system?
The entire Sheriff's Department system, Commissioner. I mean, it's everything, but to advocate, I never was a huge advocate of putting it on the expensive downtown real estate. I just can't justify that. And whatever expense we incur going back and forth, to me, is certainly worth it compared to what it would cost to put it on that per square foot maximum security figure.
Well, I agree with the judge that this is a much better picture than what we might have expected based upon construction costs and how long we are post-passage of the CIP program. And I think it is validation, frankly, of the process that we used in the planning of this facility, the project management process that we agonized over so greatly before we decided to go ahead and do it. I think this is validation that we were right.
That's good, but just keep in mind, we're still years away from completing this.
Well, I was going to say, don't jump to my credit here too soon, because I don't think we've hired that project manager yet or we may have hired it, but I don't know how much we've gotten from that project management company.
He's part of the project team. There's been some engaging meetings with the designers, project managers, and Sheriff's Department. Sheriff's Department, especially Bob Knowles, has really come to the table to make this happen for us.
Commissioner Johnson,
you can't have it both ways. It either works or it doesn't.
Well, we ain't got the building built yet. I just want to say that I continue to believe that one of the smartest things that our sheriff has done in his tenure here is to bring Bob Knowles on board. We appreciate very much the work, and I tell Dallas County that every time I see him.
I would like to introduce Randy Gideon.
Nice to meet you, Randy. Glad to be here. David's given you all the current good news, and, starting where we are is better than starting in the hole, which I think that's the point everybody's trying to make. It could have very easily been with 30% cost escalation over the last couple of years. It could have been very easily that we started in the hole, and it truly is been a team effort. The construction manager and our team working together with the sheriff's department to eliminate that floor, because one, that was a great idea, but you still had to shoehorn it all in, and it did cause us to press some things down. And my team and the other participants did a great job of trying to satisfy that desire that Chief Knowles came up with, which I think is great. Just to remind you all of a couple of things, the goals that we had that we still accomplished by doing that, and some of them even a little better, is that, one, we wanted to maintain a scale that was appropriate for our neighbors, and by pushing this building down, we have a building that steps down towards that western edge that's a little bit lower in buildings as we move away from the central part of the city. Also, at the street level, we wanted to maintain a pedestrian feel and scale, and we have that entry on the southwest corner that'll be the public lobby that goes into visitation and will be the main lobby of the building. Even though we had to push some confinement areas down on the first floor along with some service areas and other things, that worked out okay. There's about 8 feet of slope across that site, and some of it was not going to be very accessible to the street anyway, so that really kind of worked out, and by pushing that down is what helped us to recover some of that space. While accomplishing the mission of housing, prisoners and treating them, we've been able to maintain a facade, I think, with this design that's dignified and both approachable. It's a building that is not intimidating and without some type of a feel for it that make it a really good neighbor for the downtown and for fitting into the downtown fabric. One of the other things that we were going to try to do was maintain our service on Burnett Street between the existing jail and the new part of the facility, and we've done that. That way it confines all of our security issues and maintenance issues to that area rather than on the other sides of the building, because we've got Belknap and Weatherford with traffic issues, and Cherry Street, which is a more public face, so we've managed to keep the service on the back side where we have the sally porch for the jail. Finally, maintaining the connection at that upper floor, we looked at lots of options on that. Maintaining that connection, we've tried to minimize the impact of that. It is on that service quarter, but for the safety and operational efficiency of the staff and of the prisoners themselves going back and forth for treatment, operating the jail, it worked out best to have that connection at that level, and it works very well. And I think that that's going to be much more desirable than transporting people up and down elevators and other things that we can avoid. What I want to do is just go over some of our general goals for the building. At this time, I'm going to let Don Olson talk about the floor plan as it developed, and I think you'll see it worked out very well. The last thing I'd leave you with is that one of the things that made the building facade more, I guess, a friendlier facade and not as stark maybe as some jails is that we used a maintenance quarter around the jail facilities where we could put light into that maintenance quarter to accomplish a couple of things that Don can talk about a little bit more. But one, general maintenance and control of the utilities can be done from that quarter around the jail cells, and yet we can still have windows in it and not be into the cells themselves. And that worked out to be a great idea in terms of managing the upper floors and making the building. And it introduces light into that maintenance area, which is also very nice for maintaining the building.
Before you turn it over to Don, I want to congratulate you on the facade. It is a very good solution in my mind to our goal of not having this correctional institution-looking thing in the middle of downtown Fort Worth. I think y'all did an excellent job.
Thank you. I think the development of that design is going to really depend on the materials, and Michael's going to talk a little bit about the materials we're planning on using to make it compatible with the buildings around it, but to have a little bit of its own flavor and character while really addressing the architectural character of the other buildings around it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Randy and David both have hinted on a couple of those unique little challenges they tossed my way. I think they all kind of teased me a little bit when we were having the design discussion about removing a floor from the building. It got quiet on my side of the table. In fact, they were wondering if I was still there for a few minutes. But we were able to work through it. We met, had a number of discussions on the project, and I think it really worked out quite well. Chief Knowles and I have known each other for quite a while, and it was quite clear to me, or became clear as to how the management of the facility was going to be addressed. The type inmates, the special management inmates that were going to occupy the building, again, those lent themselves to doing what we did by rearranging and taking the building off. On the first floor, as Randy was mentioning, the lower left-hand corner, which is the southwest corner of the building, is our public entry off of Weatherford. Fairly open space. Again, as you will, there's not a lot of public that will be going up into the building, so this is where we placed our video visitation area. It's where we made our staff entry on the lower right corner. Off that same street was where we're going to bring staff in, get a locker area, exercise briefing kind of space for them there. As you move up into the core of the building, you'll see our inmate elevators. You'll see one particular elevator that'll go up through on the left-hand side there. That's for the public, for those persons that do need to come up and have a non-contact visit up on the housing floors. Also to the right, there's the tunnel connection where we connect into the correction center and able to move inmates underground, if you will, to courts and to transfer. Because again, all the transfers, if you'll recall, to the facility will remain in the correction center, intake, release, and such. This will be a standalone facility, but again, we'll have those places. The holding cells you see on the center right of the built plan there are for those court transfers as we move people to and from the building, so we can stage, give the sheriff's staff that opportunity to prepare and receive inmates that are going to and from court or to and from other facilities. If I can find the down arrow here. Oh, and the upper half on that is, as Randy was kind of mentioning, from right to left, there's about 9 foot of slope in the side. So by doing that perimeter chase, as we discussed, we're able to get the streetscape to be what it needs to be for a downtown facility, but that inner wall that you see there, that becomes our detention perimeter. That becomes that concrete-filled block reinforced that allows the inmates to be where they need to be and remain where they need to be and give us the durability and security that we want, while also lets the facilities folks then do what they need to within that chase, and we don't have to interrupt the detention officers going to a housing unit with our maintenance carts and such. We can do that from the chase side, and really saves a lot of time both and provides a much higher degree of security for the facility. The second level on this plan, and as Randy was saying there to the right center, you'll see the dock area that faces onto the existing dock and intake area of the corrections center. We had a lot of discussion related to where we place the kitchen in the building, and this became the consensus of everyone to place it on grade there where they can come in and out from the dock. They don't have to move food up and down elevators to transport to Green Bay and Cold Springs and such, so it worked quite well. It also allowed us on that lower right as a mechanical space, but it allows us, if we determine we need a little additional space for that kitchen to meet all the flow and production requirements of a 16,500 meal per day kitchen, we can move into that space there. So works quite well. Also, to maximize the...
Where is the kitchen?
The kitchen is the left half of the plan.
The left half.
The left half. My plan, it's yellow. It's kind of yellow-green on the screen up there. That's a large kitchen, as you can imagine. So again, the flows of that, if you think of a process of product coming in, going out, the distribution of that, a lot of more effort will occur within that space. The next time you see it, it'll be in the same spot, but the flows within that will have been tweaked. Upper right-hand corner is, again, some of that additional housing. When we took an entire floor off, that's where we placed 35 of those single cells, male cells went into that particular area. The third floor, again, one of the unique challenges of a site like this is where you put all the different components. When you have a public entrance on the first floor, you have a second level that's at a different grade, then you start getting into truly above grade levels. So this worked out quite well to put our male separation cells on the floor. It also worked out quite well. In the center core on the right, you'll see a kind of a blue color. That becomes the jail administrative area, the captain, lieutenants, and sergeants that run the facility, along with central control, the new central control for this building. All occurs on this particular level. So it worked out again well to provide access, be able to manage the inmates that are on the floor. Again, separation cells, to remind you, those cells that have the shower within the cell itself for, again, inmates that are either there for protective custody, for actions within the jail that they've done where they need to can't assimilate with other inmates, and those that are just there for a number of different reasons along that line. The fourth floor is again, as Randy mentioned, this is off to the right. You'll see the sky bridge that connects to the Correction Center medical floor. It has 4 24-bed quads as they rotate around the outside. They look yellow on the large screen. They're orange on my little printout. But each of the 4 quads, and they're set up to either be a combination of medical or mental health for the male inmates. The nurses station and such in the center there are quite open. They're very low, so within that 24-bed quad, you have a tremendous amount of observation. The sight lines are very good.
Are those quads the 4 areas on
in
2
each
on the
corner?
bottom, 2 on the top?
Yes, ma'am. Essentially each corner of the building.
The corners of the building.
And they're made up of a combination of some 4-bed wards, some single cells, some negative pressure cells, violent cells. One of the units will be set up as a cardiac unit. Again, just fine-tuned within that. We spent a good portion of time reviewing this with the sheriff's staff and the medical staff. Chief Knowles brought in, took advantage of a gentleman that works with John Peter Smith Hospital from, I believe, San Bernardino County, if I recall. And again, it was quite helpful as we just reviewed the layout and plans to see if it really was going to serve the needs of the sheriff's department, and it came out quite well. The center core there, that blue core, becomes more of a treatment area, multiple exam rooms. If we need to bring inmates from the adjacent tower, also there's waiting areas, the medical area, whatever kind of narcotic storage needs to be there. Those are all in that core, the staff areas. So that functions is more of an infirmary type function, while the 4 quads are those medical units. And then the last floor, the 5th floor of the building, became all single cell male, where we had large day rooms prior to this because of the geometry of the facility. We infilled those, as Dave was mentioning, with more of a linear arrangement. The management and the type of the inmates that are going to be in the building, again, lent themselves to this. We made a trip to Austin and met with the jail standards, with the executive director and with Brandon Wood, to present this to them, just to walk them through it, to visit with them. And they thought it was very good. They liked it right away and had no qualms sending us an approval letter on the schematics based on this scheme.
Now, these are not separation cells.
That's correct. This type, you still see areas that provide showers and toilets outside the cell areas for the inmates. It's an area that will probably reduce that. In fact, jail standards suggested that we could reduce the count because, again, the type of inmates, you're not going to have a normal day room where you might have a number of inmates out in the day room at the same time. In this case, because of the type inmates, there'll be a maximum of 2 people in each half. They're set up to where you can still operate it literally as 4 quadrants of the building, just by the way we provided barriers and such. The core of the building, again, inmate elevators, the yellow portion there, again, I mentioned earlier, was that public elevator where we'd bring someone if they needed to actually have an inmate visit, just to the left of center there, Commissioner. On the right-hand side of the core, you'll see such as the officer's dining room and kitchen. Those, again, support functions for the jail facility. And each housing floor, I failed to point out, also has a disciplinary hearing room and a holding cell for that if they need room to take an inmate out of that. Last but not least, the roof, again, mechanical space, penthouse type areas and such. And I'll turn it over to Michael now and let him discuss the exterior. I guess I could ask if there are any other questions too before I take off.
Thank you. Michael, how you doing?
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Commissioners. When Gideon outlaid the program and the county's desires for this project, one of the things that they stressed was really important was that the county wanted to have a jail that didn't necessarily look like what we think of when we think of a jail. They wanted a building that actually was a very compatible structure that would fit right into downtown and wouldn't necessarily raise eyebrows when you drove by it. In fact, something that would actually be have a positive impact on its site. Going through the budget and getting a better feel for where costs lie in this building. This is a building where a lot of the costs are not going to be seen. These kinds of buildings have to be built to very expensive construction standards. There's a lot of money spent on security, mechanical systems, and so forth. So in taking a look at how to skin the outside of this building to make it attractive and make it feel like it was part of downtown, we having worked in downtown in Fort Worth, there's just a treasure trove of great architecture. A lot of it, like the courthouse, is obviously very expensive to build and would not have been the kind of building that we would want to try to look to as a reference. But there is a great sort of store chest of buildings that have been built over the years in Fort Worth, particularly in the early part of the 20th century, that did provide some references that we wanted to look at, primarily because of their ability to create detail and human scale with very, very sort of modest level of detail. And so buildings like the TMP terminal, the Central Fire Station, Will Rogers, some of the commercial buildings such as Western Union and the Lone Star Gas and the Sinclair building are all great examples of architectures which employ detail in a somewhat sort of streamlined, sparing way, but at the same time harken back to a lot of the classical buildings that we see when we look around the courts building and even some of the work we did on the Family Law Center. And so these buildings were really the departure point as we started to sort of embellish and kind of develop the concept that was presented a while back. This somewhat faded out image, I don't know if it looks any better on your screens, but this shows the
much better.
this shows the elevation along Weatherford Street. So this would be the front of the building. On the left would be the public entrance, and on the right corner would be the staff entrance. The building, if you're trying to get sort of an appreciation for the size of it, with the reduction in floor height, the mass of the building is actually almost identical to the Family Law Center, just coincidentally. It was about 15 feet taller before we took the floor out. This is a 200 by 200 block. That's a 200 by 220 block, but this is the 200-foot facade, as would be the north facade of the courts building. So when you go outside, you can at least kind of get a feel for what the mass of the building is. Now, the plan obviously generates a very different looking building in terms of where we could do massing relief. And there wasn't a whole lot, because as the plans you saw, the building pretty much fills up the entire block. So, taking some of the clues from those buildings that we looked at, we used some very, very subtle adjustments in the massing, try to accentuate the corners where the entrances are, and tried to create as much relief as we could by taking the brick skin and doing some very subtle folds along these two principal Weatherford and Belknap elevations, which we think are more important than the Cherry and Burnett sides, which are really the sides of the building. Weatherford and Belknap obviously playing a key role in how people come and leave downtown. And this is a little bit of a close-up of the main facade. And we do take cues from some of the existing buildings that the county occupies, and that sort of classic division of the building into sort of a strong base, a middle section, and then a parapet at the top that has some definition. So these are things that are very familiar in a lot of the buildings in downtown, and which give the building a more pedestrian scale as you walk by the building. The materials that are currently called for in the design, that ground floor would be striated brick and stone. So we wanted to sort of harken back to some of the rusticated bases that you see on the courthouse, for example, or the law center, or some of the other county buildings, but we obviously didn't want to go to the expense of doing all stone. So what we've done is do something that's a mixture of simple bands of stone separated by brick. And then as you move further up the building in the midsection, it's predominantly a brick facade that has a few cast stone accents. The windows are grouped to create sort of a little bit of a vertical orientation. The building is primarily fairly horizontal. The existing jail next door is a very tall building, sort of an aggressive mass next to this. And so we wanted to give the building at 5 stories enough verticality that it could kind of stand on its own. So we thought it was important to gang those windows on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors, and then the windows at the very top are treated as what's referred to as an attic story, so that the building has an appropriate top, much like many of the buildings in downtown. So these are all devices that we used to make the building both sort of reflect what's going on in it, relate to the pedestrian, and also relate to downtown. This shows the side elevation on Cherry Street. The Burnett side would be quite similar. Here we've reduced even further the level of detail. The pilaster elements that kind of break up the center mass on the front are eliminated here. We thought this was a place the building could be somewhat simplified. Window openings become, in this case, grills for a lot of the ventilation requirements that the building is going to have. So we try to push all that to the 2 sides of the building so that we can do windows towards the front. And then the drawing that Randy showed earlier, which just shows the building from the southwest corner with the facade facing Weatherford, and then you see a little bit of the facade facing Cherry Street. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Well done.
Thank you.
The next steps, we would like the Commissioners Court to approve the schematic design and capital budget related to the jail building.
So what we saw earlier?
Yes.
I will move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? GK has this puzzled look on his face.
David, is that an action you wanted to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
We'll be continuing design. The next
Easiest one of those things you've gotten through here.
Yes, sir, it is. Thank you very much. We'll be continuing design effort. You'll see us in again about 5 months on this when we come back with the design development and a little more detail on the skin and the layout and the updated cost estimate. This is a good time for me to discuss the Correction Center variance beds. I want to remind you that we do have in our jail system 648 variance beds, variance to Texas Commission on Jail Standards statutes. These beds, variance bed is one that doesn't strictly comply with the statutes.
And we've had this variance for what?
1994. We installed these.
Yeah.
We installed these 648 variance beds in 1994 because of jail overcrowding, and we've passed jail standards each and every year since then, and we hope to continue to do that. However, I have talked with the jail standards folks, and every time we add a bed or change a bed's function, and it's somewhat good timing here, that we'll be adding 445 high-security single beds in the next few years, and that will change our mix-up a little bit. And we would like to get a little bit better handle and more stability on these various beds with regard to them passing jail standards each and every year. There's a new law, it was enacted in 2005, that is an addition to the jail standards codes, and let me read this to you. At any time on application of the county commissioners or the sheriff, the commission, the jail commission, may grant reasonable variances, including variances that are to last a life of a facility, clearly justified by the facts for the operation of the facility, not in strict compliance with state law. A variance may not permit unhealthy, unsanitary, or unsafe conditions. What we'd like to do, there's a couple of other counties in Texas have that this particular, they call it the 511.009 variance. This particular variance has been approved for, and you'll see me back up here in a couple of weeks asking the Commissioner's Court to approve, the county judge and the sheriff to sign an application for this type of variance.
For a lifetime variance.
If it's operated in a healthy and safe manner, what happens is if we don't pass jail standards one year or something goes wrong, it would certainly be up for review. Okay. Now, these particular beds have been managed real well since 1995.
Isn't it just a few square feet is all that makes up the difference on this variance?
Yes, sir. It's about 10
square feet, is it?
It's about 10 square feet on the single cells.
10 square feet.
10 square feet. They've been operated well. I've talked with Bob about this, the sheriff. I don't think they see any problems with asking for this particular variance. These particular variance beds were used in the master planning of this new jail building, and it's important to us, I believe, to do all we can to stabilize these beds for us. So you'll see us in a couple of weeks.
Forward on that immediately.
Okay. Yep. That's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Your Honor, I might ask Mr. Phillips, can you give us a timeline on when we might expect the construction to begin?
We'll be bidding the project next summer, and we'll be buying out the project in October and November of next year, which will be come back with a guaranteed maximum price, initial, interim, and final. We plan to do this, bid all the trade packages within a couple of months of each other, so we can go ahead and get the final guaranteed maximum price, get all the documents complete, get jail standards to approve all the documents and layouts, and, of course, the City of Fort Worth and others.
Anything we can do to speed that up, please don't hesitate to come in here and ask us.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, David. Members of the Court, we can now go to item A. This is an update on Hurricane Gustav and hopefully an update on Hurricane Ike also. The reason we delayed this until the second item is because Ms. Patterson was...
I think we're going to, I'm getting the vibes that we're going to have a little break before we go into this.
Oh, man. Gosh.
How funny.
I'm sorry, Melissa, but, you know.
You read your court well. Thank you.
Morning.
Wait a minute, Duff saw you in here talking, now he's running back there to make sure the stream is moving.
Okay.
Stream is streaming.
I'm holding.
Are we going? Hey, look, I told her to come up here. Don't give her that look.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
I'm starting all over again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right, we've been going strong since August the 26th now. Did have a good break this weekend. I think most of us had time for church and a movie, and we're ready to go. We did make the agreement between the two governors.
Wait a minute, something's not working right.
It is you
I hear
speak
me.
in the mic.
I am. All right.
Crawl into it.
The agreement between the two governors was for state of Texas to take 10,000 evacuees from Louisiana via bus, and that's what we did. We ended up with about 1,400 of those in Tarrant County.
Okay.
You still having problems hearing me?
Just a little bit. Move it up just a little. Push it up just a little bit higher. I think that'll be better.
How about that? Gotcha.
And of that 14, would you characterize them as to their, we had some medical,
We did. We had about,
people with medical needs?
we ended up with more than we thought we were going to have. We thought we were going to have 0. We ended up with about 35. And some of those ended up in a shelter that wasn't quite equipped to handle them. But we managed to get around that one. We did end up with one gentleman in the hospital post-fall, and we're taking care of him. He's going to be a transfer from that hospital back to a hospital in his home state. So I think he's taken care of for now. That 1,400 was only what we had arrive in buses. It does not include any of the self-evacuees. All of the hotels in the area were full, so we don't have a good count of how many people we actually had here. For Gustav, 3 counties in the state of Texas had a mandatory evacuation prior to landfall. And we didn't end up with any of those via bus, but we did end up with some self-evacuees. And those guys ended up going home and being okay with just a minor amount of flooding. We did open the resource connection, and we housed Red Cross volunteers only. There were 42 of them, and they were from 16 different states. So we're real proud of that one. The state was glad that we were able to hold that one open for them, and it looks like we'll probably try to do that again with Ike. And speaking of Ike, we should know at 6 o'clock this afternoon, once it hits the Gulf, what a general direction will be. Right now we're looking for a Corpus Christi landfall. If it turns a little bit more to the west, we may be lucky enough to get it down to the Brownsville, Mexico border, which would be, good relief for us. But we also have to remember that in the event of a valley evacuation, the number will triple. The people don't have the resources to drive themselves away from there. So the state would send about 1,000 buses to evacuate that area, and we would get those evacuees.
How many would we expect under that scenario with a Texas hit rather than a Louisiana?
With a Texas hit, most of our resources would come to the table, and we would probably end up with about 10,000, between 10,000 and 12,000 people in Tarrant County. But that includes all of the city-run shelters and all of the faith-based initiatives as well. The state is working on a plan with the colleges. UTA is one of their members, and they have a capacity of about 400, which would be a state-funded shelter. We did have shelters in all 4 precincts, and we'll have them again, probably about triple the number that we had prior to.
Is the state of Louisiana going to reciprocate?
I'm pleading the 5th.
You want to go down there?
We've not yet had a conversation with the state of Louisiana, and the main reason why is because they still have shelters open for Gustav in which they're housing their own residents for that central area that was severely flooded.
I will tell you that having a son at Baton Rouge, they are still without power in many parts of that city and still cleaning up. LSU went back to school today, but they're saying that the place that he lives right now is still without power. They're expecting it could be a week, in some cases 2 to 3 weeks, before they'll get power back to the entire city.
Right, and as of the 1,200 or so, or 1,400 that we sent back via bus, those were all directed to Shreveport, and only half of those made it back to their home parishes. The rest ended up in shelters within the state.
I see.
I don't have a very detailed report on Ike. I will say that all resources that the state had ready have been mobilized, sent to Corpus Christi area. And if there's a need, they will restructure where those resource staging areas are set up. That's all I've got for you. I'm sure I'll be back next week. Do you have any questions?
I would really like to tell you how much we appreciate the work you and the other folks in the administrator's office have done this past week. I know you were very, very active, and we know that it looks like we're going to be doing that at least again this week and this weekend, and we appreciate everything y'all are doing and the way you're handling that. I want to thank all the Tarrant County folks who have helped and participated in this. Judy, your group out at Resource Connection, everyone really has pitched in and is, I think, doing an excellent job. There is, just for court members of interest, at least last week, for the most part, there was a 1 o'clock conference call. If you're interested in being a part of that, there's a number you can call into and just basically put your phone on mute and listen. And if you've got any questions or any comments, you can get into that particular process. But I want to thank you again for the work you've done.
Thanks. We have a really good team, and I think we might be making an argument from at least my BlackBerry in my truck.
Great. Thanks.
Okay.
Kind of stop you there, and you kind of regroup?
Your Honor, members of the court, we could go to the next item. This is the FY09 budget-related issues. Mr. Snyder is here to address the court at this time. There you go. You need me to hand out anything?
Thank you.
When we left yesterday, we met with several of the departments that report to the court. Obviously, we were trying to get the budget balanced and be able to fund our capital out of our current resources. Before you, we have some of those adjustments that were presented by several of the departments, and I'm just going to quickly touch on some of those. You see, IT has presented us with $423,000 approximately in capital reductions for various projects. Facilities has gone back and identified some FF&E and AV equipment that we can defer on this building's project. Central Garage identified some vehicles that can be deferred another year. We moved down to professional services for IT. Transportation, talked to the state of Texas, and they've identified one project where we had initially had it spread over 2 years. They said 3 years would be fine. As we told you, we went back and looked at the structure merit market based on the positions that ended up in the budget. And of course, anybody that was a new hire after August 1st drops off of the merit list. Overall, there was a reduction of $173,000 to the structure merit market. Precinct 2, we added back, obviously we're trying to dot our I's and cross our T's at this point in time. There was a reclass that was requested in Precinct 2. We had inadvertently taken it out, so we've restored that in the budget. The tax office has hired their accounting director position, and they have 2 new positions in the budget. One was an accountant, grade 72, and one was a bookkeeper 5. And based on the outside resources they've had assisting them with their accounting initiatives, they've actually recommended 2 bookkeepers, grade 17s, instead of an accountant and bookkeeper. That had a minor reduction to their salaries, but at the same time we discovered when they hired their new accounting director, it came in significantly more than what the hiring rate was for that position, so a majority of that went to fund that basic salary. Now we get to admit that, gee whiz, we made a couple of mistakes yesterday. We overstated the district clerk's temporary salaries. The dollar amount you showed here is a reduction from what we approved yesterday. It does restore them to their original budget request. I've discussed it with the district clerk, and I've committed in blood that he is receiving $242,000 in temporary salaries. Constable 4, we made a slight error in their salary, as shown and voted on yesterday. And then we were also looking at the fact that each of the precincts have a senior deputy constable. Each of them have a senior deputy constable. Precinct 4 has never filled that position. They haven't internally promoted anyone, and they've done that intentionally. But without this funding, then in order to make that transition next year, if they chose to, it would cause a salary problem. We approved the field training officers' additional pay yesterday. And when HR was talking to us, it was clear that, once again, with a major policy change, that's going to have to go into effect January 1st. The dollar amount we showed you yesterday was an annual impact amount. And obviously, we've got some payroll changes to make, some policies to bring forth to you for your final approval. So like we did with the expansion of shift differential, it'll become effective January 1st. So we were able to adjust one-time 25% of that initial funding. Overall, yesterday, including the mistakes I just mentioned, we actually increased the budget by $365,000. You take all of these other adjustments that your departments have brought forward to you, that brings us with a total reduction of $1,421,163. Now, in the end, what does that do? That dollar amount gets transferred into our operating transfer for capital purposes. With the reductions that our departments have offered to you, that brings us in what we consider a perfect solution, perfect foundation.
So we are balanced.
We are okay.
Excellent.
Debbie, did you?
That's not a precise answer.
We are
That's not
balanced.
quite what you said.
Did you take off the haul trailer?
No. Commissioner Fickus did give to us an additional $79,000 reduction in capital for one of their items this morning.
Took it off?
It's not in these numbers, but we will.
Thank you.
And I see that there's a late request for some additional funding.
Yes, and there's two more things I want to quickly discuss with you. Each year we include in the budget, it's an offsetting adjustment or amount of $1 million to take in consideration those things that may come forward during the year that would bring in a revenue stream and have a corresponding expense, and that way we can address it without it having an adverse impact on our undesignated. We always start that at $1 million. This year there are discussions going on with two cities, being the city of Fort Worth and the city of Haslett, about opportunities for us to assist them in several projects. Haslett, we started a contract with them in fiscal 08 for patrol services, and they're currently talking with the administrator's office about expanding those services. Knowing the $2 amounts that are on the table, we're recommending that we increase that allocation to $2 million. Once again, it has no impact. We'll have $2 million shown as revenue and $2 million as an expense. Then for the late request, and I apologize for this not being on your list yesterday. I had it sitting right in front of me for the last week and a half. But both Commissioner Brooks and Commissioner Johnson brought forward to me a request that came from the city of Fort Worth, late, very, very late. It was dated toward the end of August. And it was for their community action agency. And if you'll remember, we were all struggling with what that acronym stood for when we talked about the public assistance programs. And they were requesting an addition to their funding of $7,200.
I don't have any problem with that.
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now, that's just for the community.
For the $7,200 for, I believe it's now called Community Action Partners.
Oh, I put agency.
And
you're right.
isn't there-
Partners Agency is what it is.
And
yeah.
the city of Fort Worth actually administers that grant?
And these are for locations that are in Kennedale and
Saginaw or
Somewhere up there in
Precinct 4.
Kennedale and somewhere, you're right.
Watauga, maybe?
Is it River Oaks?
Is it Haltom City?
Where? No.
Nerds?
No, it's in precinct 4.
Haltom City is?
Anyway,
Further northwest.
they are located outside of the city of Fort Worth.
Yes.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And actually, just so we can have all of our I's dotted, there are most of these actions here are not things that you took action on yesterday. And so if you could also just make a motion on the balance of the information.
These are,
I move to include the balance of the recommendations that are on the sheet that Debbie gave us today.
second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
What's next? And I didn't mention this, but I know you knew it, that this is all still based on a tax rate of .264, which is a quarter-cent reduction from our current tax rate. We will actually spread the structure merit market to all the departments. We will have a few dollars flop out here and there as we make these salary adjustments to all the departments, so the dollar amounts might change minutely. Our goal right now is to get that structure merit market spread, make final little notations to the budget, the footnotes and so forth, and we need to get it printed so we can approve it next Tuesday. After next Tuesday, then we'll be working on the special purpose budgets, and those will be back before you, I think, on September 30th. I think the last Tuesday of the month is September 30th. Any questions?
The only comment I would make, and again, I want to thank you and your staff for the work that y'all did to get us to where we are. We may sometimes complain, but the request started out for basically operating expenses of $208 million, and you brought that down to somewhere in the neighborhood of $196. Capital started out at 66, and you brought that down to somewhere around 35 to 36. Had you not done that, then we would have spent a great many days, I believe, in here laboring over this to do what it took you, I know, close to 5 to 6 months to do. And so I, for one, and I know the other members of the court, appreciate very much the effort that you and your staff put in, and really everybody in going through the budget hearings to get this done. So we appreciate that very much.
Very kind comments, and as you mentioned, obviously Helen and Christopher had a lot to do with this too, and we couldn't make it work without the cooperation of the departments. I mean, even at 4:30 yesterday, they were sitting around the table, rallying around, trying to assist with this final little push and effort. And of course, these are the same people that we'd already asked of. So we appreciate their understanding.
That's something that I wanted to do, was to thank those departments that went back and looked at their budget requests again and came up with additional cuts to help us meet that shortfall.
Bottom line, we're all just here to serve.
Well, and that's very much the case. I really believe that, and I mean, we have some great employees. We wish that we could give everybody and pay everybody more money, but I will say we do everything we can to try to make sure that we keep our people competitive. I know that the county to the east, which we often refer to, has not been so fortunate with their values this year, and have had to basically give no increases. And I think we really push at trying to keep things competitive, but at the same time be very mindful of the tax rates, because we do understand, and I think very much do everything we can to try to be able to be very mindful of the taxes that everybody's paying.
Well, and I know it's difficult for the departments too, as we're talking about these and making some tough decisions along the line. It has nothing to do whether we think they need it or not, because the fortunate thing that we have going on with us in Tarrant County, and you get to mention it, Employee Appreciation Day, is our employees. And we tend to do things right here, and it makes things easier. But I know as we're discussing issues, and it's always more staff, we understand what they're talking about. Unfortunately, it just can't always happen, because as they're looking at their need today, we're trying to look at the need in the long term. So, again, we thank everybody.
Long-term consequences. Again, thank you very much for your work.
Again, that's a quarter-cent reduction, not an eighth-cent reduction.
Your Honor, that's all we have right now.
Pull out my little sheet here.
You know, this is the 27th budget we've given her. 27.
That's correct. The Commissioners' Court will now recess to open session and proceed to closed session to discuss items exempted under Sections 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code.
Margie Drake, Margie Mata,
You're
Margie
kidding.
Weaver.
Have a return from closed session, there being no business, we're going.
Wait.
All right, thank you. Item E1, under the District Attorney's Office, we're requesting authorization to hire outside counsel Lee Christie Jr. with an amount not to exceed $5,000 to come from the self-insurance fund.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion second, any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Under item E2, we're requesting authorization for the District Attorney's Office to pursue the appeals and, if necessary, authorize the county auditor to issue the following checks to come from the self-insurance fund and request the county auditor to pay these amounts immediately without the necessity to first appear on the claims register for approval by the court. The amounts are $15 in the Second Court of Appeals, $125 to the Texas Supreme Court, and an additional $75 to the Texas Supreme Court if the petition is granted.
So moved.
Second. We have motion and second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. With regard to item number E4, requesting authorization for the settlement agreement to be signed by the judge and authorize the check in the amount of $5,000 to be paid to Joshua Waller and Abe Factor, attorney at law, and this amount to come from the self-insurance fund, and request the county auditor to pay this amount immediately without necessity the amount first appear on the claims register for approval by the court.
So moved.
Second.
I have motion and second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. There being no further business. Adjourned.
Next week, statewide.
I'll address for someone in your suite.
Natalie. How about Natalie?
Natalie.
That'll work.
What's her last name?
Plan to work.